For same-sex couples looking to start a family, there's a variety of fertility options available, but fertility treatments can be expensive, and there are legalities to keep in mind as well. Monique Shebbeare, tax and estate planner at TD Wealth, joins me now from Vancouver with some things to keep in mind on this journey to parenthood. Monique, it's lovely to have you with us.
Thanks, it's great to be here.
Let's start off with just dig in, if we could, to some of the options that 2SLGBTQ plus parents might consider when starting a family. They might do one or another or a combination of things.
Yes, exactly. So most 2SLGBTQ plus people these days use some form of assisted reproduction to create their families. So for example, for lesbian couples, they may use donor sperm and then get pregnant through insemination or IVF if that's needed, where the embryo is created outside the body. And then for gay couples, they're most likely to use surrogacy, which is when a woman carries a pregnancy and gives birth for people, other people who are going to be the parents. And IVF is also used there, where an embryo is created often with the sperm from one of the couple and an egg donor as well.
All right, well, let's get into the dollars and cents around some of these options and the costs, and there are many, because one of the key things, of course, is when you decide to have a child, I mean, you really do need to financially prepare, but even more in this case, when it comes to the cost of actually creating said child in the process. So I know you've got some boards, you're going to talk us through some of those costs.
Yes, exactly, and it's a question lots of people have. So the costs vary a lot depending on the situation and the location. Some provinces provide some funding, for example, for one round of IVF or sometimes a dollar amount. And sometimes also people's employers may have some coverage. But to get a sense of cost, we looked at some websites from fertility clinics, from agencies, and from donor and egg banks to get a bit of a sense of the cost. So for donor insemination, we got a range of high to low. So for one cycle, roughly around $2,600 to about $10,000. For 3 cycles, and I put 3 because sometimes it takes a few more cycles to get pregnant, we put, around $6,000 to almost $26,000. And then if IVF is needed, it's around $12,700 to just over $28,000.
That's not,
and that includes things like donor sperm and also the clinic costs.
I was just going to say that's not inexpensive and definitely needs some planning. You've
No,
also got
exactly.
You've got some numbers for surrogacy as well.
Yes, exactly. So for surrogacy, the main difference is between whether the egg donor is a known donor or from a donor egg bank. So some of the costs that come into things here are the donor egg, the clinic costs, legal costs, the surrogate's expenses, because you reimburse her expenses but can't pay her, and agency if applicable. So when we look at the numbers, we see that with a known donor, the range is about $44,000 to just over $102,000. And then if eggs from a donor bank are used, we're looking at more like $48,000 to almost $140,000.
That is, those are not small numbers, and certainly I think people, need to go in eyes wide open in terms of what they might be, getting ready for. And that's not the only thing you have to think about is the cost. There's a lot of legalities you need to think about around fertility treatments. So maybe just take us, through some of that and the idea of like who even regulates this.
Yes, exactly. So with assisted reproduction, it's regulated at both levels of government in Canada. So federally, we've got the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, and that's really the law that tells us what you can and can't do in Canada. So for example, you can't pay a surrogate and you can't buy or sell embryos in Canada. And then provincially is where the parentage is dealt with. So provincially is who are going to be the legal parents when a baby is born.
What about rules around egg or sperm donations? I guess whether you're thinking even if that's used in surrogacy or insemination.
Yes. So donors strictly regulated in Canada. So there's strict requirements in terms of written consent of the donor before eggs or sperm can be used. And then also in Canada, we're not allowed to pay sperm or egg donors. And that's sometimes why you'll see people using sperm or eggs that come from US banks.
On the surrogacy front, and I know I've had some friends go through this, I know it's pretty important to have the surrogacy agreement well in place before the surrogate becomes pregnant.
Yes, very important. So the requirements vary province by province, but it's almost universal that you'll need a written agreement with the surrogate made before there's any pregnancy. And that will cover that the intended parents are going to be the legal parents, what the surrogate's expenses are that are going to be reimbursed, and a whole bunch of other really important things.
What about insemination? I'm going to expect that you would also need to have an agreement in place, ideally before that takes place as well, too.
For that one, it depends on the situation. So if people are using, sperm from a sperm bank, usually the sperm bank's own paperwork covers all that off. But sometimes people want to use a known donor, a friend, or a family member. And in that case, it's really strongly recommended. And sometimes clinics will actually require that there be a written agreement before pregnancy.
So if someone is listening to this, they've been thinking about it, and they've decided, this is something we want to explore, because actually some of these options, and we mentioned for 2SLGBTQ plus couples, but it could be for single parents, it could be for any couple, quite frankly, who are looking to do some of these things this way. Who should they be talking to as they start to go down this road?
Yeah, a few key people would be, often people will start with fertility clinics. They have a lot of great information. Also, it's really important to speak to a lawyer who specializes in fertility law and really knows those requirements. And then we've been talking about the costs. So on the funding and financial side, talking to a financial planner, investment advisor, a banker about the options for funding it, and also how to do it tax efficiently, because there are some federal tax credits for medical expenses that can be used.
Monique, you are a font of information. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks so much.